What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of Overthinking Understanding podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Moore, and we are back with another episode. What's going on, beautiful people? Y'all heard that intro, so y'all know we are back with another episode. This is the first guest episode of 2026, so I will not keep y'all waiting. I know that y'all are excited. Today we have the guest, Dr. Edwards. He is the author of The Venus Flytrap, and we're going to be giving y'all some great wisdom and take-home advice. Dr. Edwards, can you please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Victoria. I'm looking forward to this. As I said, I was just listening to one of your recent podcasts, so I think we have a pretty strong alignment here. And I know if people listen to you, they'll feel the same way. And so we're going to have fun and maybe a couple of the new ideas that people can apply in their lives and make a difference. So I'm Stephen. I'm actually, people call me doctor. And I am a doctor, but I don't really usually use that. But it's just my book coach said, well, what did he say? You have a doctorate in spiritual counseling. I said, yeah. He said, well, then you're a doctor. I went, yeah, I guess, yeah. He said, well, put it on your book. I went, oh, okay. I guess I will, So anyway, yes, I am a doctor of spiritual counseling. I'm not a doctor of medicine, just to be clear. My background is I am from New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
I'm kidding. I'm not from
I was about to say, that's not the notes we had.
You must have got out
Research
there.
department.
You must have got out of there early. No, I'm
Yeah.
from England. I'm from England, right? From Blackpool, little seaside town in the northwest of England. Had an interesting childhood, a lot of trauma, just like you and your whole audience, right? We think we're the only ones when we're kids, but then you get older, you realize you had trauma too. I never realized. You're right. But of course, as a kid, you don't know everybody else is going through trauma, right? You just think you're the only one. And when you go to school and you go to the playground, you don't get all together with the guys and go, "Are you having trauma?" Yeah, me too, man. It's a nightmare. You know what I mean? And of course, you don't want to talk about it because you're kind of ashamed about it, right? Because you think everybody else is doing great. Anyway, my parents were monsters.
Okay.
I'm kidding. They were a little controlling. They had their own trauma, when they were kids, and so we tend to pass it on, right?
Yes,
anyway,
sir.
So my dad was a bully, right? So I just was very nervous and a lot of anxiety when I was home. And of course, you didn't have a voice. They used to say, what was it? Children are supposed to be seen but not heard.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. That's
But I was never even seen, Victoria. I couldn't be seen or heard, right?
Yes, sir.
So I was walking around on eggshells, and then, I used to have to, when I went to bed, I used to have to bang my head on the pillow until I fell asleep exhausted. And I used to make this weird noise, which used to keep my sister awake. Anyway, so by the time I was 16, I was in a mental asylum, probably from banging my head so much. I don't know. But anyway, so I was admitted to, I guess you call it an insane asylum. And so I went through trauma. And there was other trauma, which is in the book, actually. I kind of spill the tea in there, right? About myself, my trauma played a role. I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm just saying these are things that happened in my life, right?
Yes, sir, of course.
And then Tamaz, is in the book, also went through trauma. She had a very traumatic childhood too. She was actually put in a mental asylum when she was 16 as well. So we were mirrors of each other in so many ways. But my point of the matter is, a lot of these things were things that I was ashamed of, right? I never wanted people to know about me because I believed that they would change their perception of me, right? And so what you don't realize is when you live in fear of people finding out about who you really are, you're living in a prison.
Yes, sir.
And you're only living a half life, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So one of the keys, and again, Tamaz taught me so many things. I mean, she was a gift in my life. Although people will read the book and go, hold on a second. How was she a gift, man? She kicked your ass, right? All the time. And I was constantly trying to get out of a bad situation. But anyway, what I realized later is that, toxic relationships, as we call them, can be one of the greatest experiences of your life because it teaches you so much, right?
So much about yourself. So much about how to react, how not to react.
Yeah, if you're prepared to look at yourself rather than blame them, right?
Yes, self-reflection. Self
Yeah, just a
reflective.
mirror, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes,
But,
sir.
people say, "He did that to me," or "She did that to me," and I have a belief, right? This is gonna sound a little weird, maybe, probably not to you, but to some of your audience. I say, "Look, nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you."
Yes, sir.
And people go, "Hold on a minute. Hold on, cowboy. How does this guy doing this to me have any, how does it happen for me?" And I go, "Okay, well, calm down. It's gonna be a journey for us, but we're gonna work through this, right?"
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't mean that someone didn't do something to you. It means that unconsciously or spiritually, they did it for you, right?
Yes, sir.
To show you a part of yourself you've either given away or hidden from the world that you don't feel like you are good enough or capable of showing for yourself. Like sometimes we're drawn to people that have a lot of confidence.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
that's
sir.
because we know it's in us, right?
Mhm.
We don't need their confidence, right? But we're attracted to it because we want to be that confident, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
so then
sir.
it's about, you know, if you're drawn to that about this person, then it's time for you to step into your own power, into your own confidence and be
Oh,
more of who
man.
you really are, you know?
Exactly. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So anyway, but then you go, well, wait a minute, what were the things in her that you were drawn to? Well, there was a lot, I mean, one of the things that drew me to her was her authenticity, right? I mean, she was brought up in a her father's a billionaire, right? So she was brought
Yeah.
up in a household where she could get whatever the hell she wanted. She was a brat. She was a brat, right? But she had that expectation of being able to say whatever she wanted to do. So she did. But I mean, the bottom line is that's being authentic. I mean, might not have always been in a positive way, but she was who she was. And, when you read the book, she says to me, I don't know how many times she says to me, listen, this is who I am, like me or not, right? You knew this is what you're getting when you took me on, right? And I go, yeah, she's right, really. You know what I mean? So sometimes we want the light side, but we don't want the dark side of someone else's nature, right? And
Exactly.
just like in ourselves, right? We got to be able to embrace both. Now, she was a little extreme, right? And in the end, I had to get off the ship. But that was one thing. And she also taught me how to be vulnerable, right?
Yes, sir.
I came in the book and I wrote about me being insane, me getting, humiliated in the showers with the guys, having a small dick. And that goes around the whole school, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so that's humiliating. But all these things eventually, as I explain in the book, all had a silver lining. They all happened for me. And you go, okay, how does having a small dick go? Well, I'll explain later, right? But anyway, so, sometimes it doesn't happen right away. We don't get it right away. But eventually, if we really stick at it, do the work as you've done, right? You start to see, well, I've been married 4 times, right?
Oh,
So
man. Okay.
people say, what was wrong with all these women? And I go, okay, let's do the math here, right? 4 marriages, throughout all 4 marriages, there's only one constant, me. So maybe it had something to do with me. What do you think?
Yes, sir.
And so it was all my childhood patterns, that I was bringing with me to these relationships because I hadn't healed. And so I say to people, listen, prevention before the cure, right? Work on yourself before you get into a relationship or at least a marriage or a deep relationship. Because if you don't, you're going to take all those negative patterns into that relationship and it's going to get destroyed anyway. So you might as well get yourself straightened out before you go into it. Of course, nobody ever listens to that, right? They have to learn by their mistakes or their experiences, which is fine. But doing the work first can definitely save a lot of confusion and a lot of years of your life.
Yes, sir.
You know, I
Yes,
learned
sir.
the hard way, right? I mean, 4 marriages. I'm not a fast learner, am I? Right? So I'd
I
gone
come
through.
I come from that environment though. The military was a lot of people that were married,
Really?
4 times. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it was big coming in the service. So you once again, as you know, you're not alone with that. So no
Well,
judgment over here.
really, I was hoping I'd go for the world record, but anyway, I guess that's out the window now. Yeah. So yeah, I'd had a lot of experiences in my life. The first 30 years of my life were pretty much a nightmare. And then I decided to come live in America. And I don't know why, Victoria, but I had this idea when I was coming to America. I thought, everyone in America is so healthy and they're
Oh
all fit.
man.
I know, right?
Whoa.
Delusional. But anyway,
Yes.
but I decided to clean up my act, right?
Yes,
I started
sir.
to eat healthily, work out, and then I started to read and, put positive things in my mind. And then I got an audio program by Tony Robbins.
Oh,
And then shortly after that, another of my businesses failed. And I got a call from a girlfriend. She's a girl and a friend, not a girlfriend. Uh, and she said to me, "Hey, I'm going to go see Tony Robbins tomorrow. I've got some tickets. You want to come?" I go, "Yeah, I do." Right. So I go see him speaking, and I've got to figure out what I'm going to do next in my life. And I'm watching him on stage, and I go, "I want to do that."
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So then I went to work for Tony Robbins. I mean, who does that? You see,
Oh,
you're going
wow.
to go
Yeah.
do that, and I made it happen, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is crazy, but I was using the tools he taught me. And it was, when he talks about you have probably going to have moments in your life where you're going to have to step up and step out. So I found out that he had a group of speakers that traveled around promoting him. And I said, okay, I'll do that then. So then, it's not that easy, but you had to send in all this stuff to a particular person. I found out who that person was. Her name was Deborah Russell. So I sent it in overnight, FedEx, right? So I knew it was going to land on her desk about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So then I called her about 10:05, right? And I said, yeah, hi, Deborah. My name is Stephen Edwards, and I sent you a package with my video in it, applying to be a speaker. And she goes, "Have you any idea how many of these packages I get every month?" She said, "I'll take a look at it. If I'm interested, I'll let you know."
Mm.
I said, "I know you get a lot of these packages, Deborah. That's why I'm calling, because you don't get a lot like this one. Take a look at it today, and I'll call you tomorrow."
I love it. I love
And
it.
then I get off the phone, and I almost faint. I'm going, "Whoa,
Yeah.
man, you stepped out there, man. Holy shit," you know? Anyway, she called me that same day. She called me in the afternoon, and she said, "Okay, here's the deal. We're gonna fly you out here. If we like you, you get to stay for 3 days. If we don't, we're gonna fly you back. If you're willing to come out here under those conditions, we'll fly you out." And I was thinking, "Hell yeah," right? So I go, "Yes," right? So I go out there. Anyway, I ended up staying out there a month. This was just around Thanksgiving. So I ended up staying for Tony's Christmas party, met him, joined the company, and that was the start of my speaking career.
Oh, man.
So anyway, how long do you have?
As long as you have, we are here. We are here.
So then started me on a journey, an amazing journey. And then I left working for Tony and started my own events. He introduced me to more spiritual teachers. Like, I don't know if you remember these guys, but like Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the old school, right?
Yes, sir.
James Redfield, Neil Donald Walsh. Anyway, so and I was more drawn to that. So I started doing my own mind, body, and spirit events.
Yes, sir.
And then at the end, we did a lot of very powerful spiritual teachings and experiences. Is very experiential. And people would say after me, "Man, that was amazing. And I want to keep it going. Would you be my coach?" Right. And I would say, "I can't. I don't have any licensure, right? I can't, you can't just decide I'm going to be that, right?"
Yes, sir.
So I thought, I'm not going to go to college for 7 years and, you know, get a degree in psychology and become a psychologist. That's just not on the cards. But I found out that there was a way to become a spiritual counselor and get a PhD doctorate in about half the time, right? I go, okay, that's my strategy, right? Do it in half the time. I'm in.
Yes,
So that's why I got a PhD in spiritual counseling, not because I wanted the doctorate, but just so I could have licensure to do coaching, right?
yes,
And
sir.
so I never really gave a lot of thought to it. Anyway, so you go, hold on a second. You'd spent 20 years doing spiritual counseling. You had like 20 years in personal development. And you let this happen? You went through this unbelievable. I mean, I thought you were an idiot throughout the whole freaking book.
No,
You get to the end of one chapter and you're going, "Thank God for that."
it's a very
He's
interesting read.
he's got out of it. And then then you open the next chapter, you go, "Oh my God, he went back again. No
Right.
way," right? It's like I
It
was a
keeps you
glutton for punishment.
interested.
Yeah. So my life has been amazing, but ups and downs.
Yes,
So
sir.
when I was and admitted to a mental hospital, they told me I was a manic depressive, and they call that bipolar
Mm,
here, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
my life has kind of been a reflection of that, super highs, super lows, maybe more on the low side. But anyway, that's me. That's me. My life has been, well, as you can see in that situation, it was a major catastrophe. But I'm a risk taker, right? And I knew I mean, you just look at her and you go, she's going to be a problem. She's going to be dangerous, right? And then you know, God, some people call it the universe, God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. I don't think any of them have got an ego in it, right? As long as you know they're there, right? So anyway, at the beginning, when we first met, and I tell people, listen, people tell you who they are in the first 3 minutes of your meeting,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
So I was texting her back and forth. She agreed to go on a date with me one day, and then the next day she canceled, right? So I'm thinking, oh God, right? So then I got to get another date. So I get a date, right? And I'm thinking, I'm not going to let her cancel again. I'm going to really tie this date down, right? So I tell her about all these crazy arrangements I made, which were way over the top. But then I said, I wanted to let her know I was going to buy her flowers because you can't cancel when you know someone's going to buy you flowers, right? So I said to her, I said, what's your favorite? By the way, what's your favorite flower? And she said, bird of paradise. And I joke around, it's just my sense of humor. I can't keep it in. So I go, nah, mine too. It's a bit expensive though. So what's your second favorite? And she came back, Victoria, instantly Venus flytrap.
I know it's coming to it. I do.
Yeah, because you read it, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But my point is she told me right there and then, and my intuition went, "Hello," right? And I said back, because he said she's dangerous, and I went, "Well, I kinda like dangerous," you know what I mean? This
Mm,
could be fun, you know what I mean? And it was fun, but it also was very dangerous, right? I mean,
yes.
how I never got arrested and sent to jail is amazing, right? I was like she was the Venus flytrap, and I was the fly. I kept
Yeah.
getting away, right? And she was frustrated the hell out of her, right? Because most of the flies did not get away, right?
Exactly.
She devoured them, right? So, yeah, so I don't know if that was an introduction or a book, but anyway, that's a little bit of background about me, how I ended up in this situation, and why I seem to be hopefully more stupid than I actually am when I'm not in a toxic relationship.
Yes. Yes. First of all, I think that was amazing. I love it when people can just flow with the conversation. So, sometimes people get in front of the camera or on podcast, including myself when I first started. And it's
Yeah.
like your whole personality just gets sucked out. And
Yeah.
you like,
Yeah.
man, you get to watching it back, like, who is that? But it is amazing to see, like, the person that you wrote about in the book and then, like, actually to be able to speak to the author, and it's like, "Oh, no, this is the same person. I can
Yeah.
see where this come from or, like, why he did this and this or how he went back so many times." So, like I always say on my show, like, being genuine to yourself, and you're
Yeah.
definitely genuine to yourself, and that came through in the book so much, and a lot of the introduction, questions that I had is you answered most of those.
Well, good.
We
But I
gonna
want
move
I
into
wanted it I wanted it to be authentic, and I wanted it to
yes,
be
sir.
which caused
Of
me a
course.
problem, when I was I'd have an editor and then come back and they go, "Yeah, but it's not me. I'm not interested in being grammatically correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Or
Oh, man.
saying it the right way. I don't talk like that, right? I talk
Exactly.
just
Yes,
normal,
sir.
right? So and I really it was important for me that it came across that it was me. And, my humor is very important, right? So the
Yes, sir.
sarcasm is just tripping off the pages, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
I was gonna add, I did get a chance to visit England twice, and I did it for work. So free trips. I don't remember exact. I just remember my recollection of England was I got some dice that has like different adult positions on there. I thought that was interesting. They were selling them on almost every street, and then we walked like 14 miles, even including, like, using, like, the train system down there, which
yeah.
is beautiful, but we walked, like, 14 miles. I just remember I talked about it in one of my episodes, they're like, because at the time, I would shoot episodes in these different locations, England, Germany, no matter where I was at, I'll take my gear and my equipment and make sure that I shoot, but I
Yeah.
did wanna say I have had a chance to visit England, and it's just, it's beautiful. It's night and day to I think the architecture that the way it's set up just on that side period, is so much different than what we see in America.
Oh, yeah, for
It just
sure.
blows your
Yeah.
mind. I wanna say one time I went, it was doing around the Thanksgiving time, and it was already Christmas decorations out,
Yeah, yeah,
and that was even just a, jolt back to reality, cause like, duh, Thanksgiving is an American holiday, but you get so caught up in seeing life the way that you do,
yeah.
sometimes you do get pulled out of there, and I was like, "Why they got" then I was like, "Oh, that makes sense, cause they don't celebrate that over here." But, yeah,
I do li
it
I
was
do like
beautiful.
Christmas in England, but I think some of that is probably because I grew up there, right?
Yeah.
So it's more ho feels like home when a Christmas is in England because it's what I remember, right?
Yes, sir, yes, sir. The fish and chips.
Oh,
It was a lot of
don't even bring that up now. I'm gonna have to go find some fish and chips later
fish
today
and
now.
chips and peas. I was
Oh,
like,
the peas, and they also have curry sauce now. The curry
yeah.
sauce is to
Oh,
die for.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Mhm.
I be telling my family about these places that I've been fortunate enough to travel, but it doesn't feel the same. Like, I want us to be able to have this experience. I remember, and
Yeah.
then we're gonna get back on track, but, like, I remember the beauty of being able to travel, and I didn't know, like, over there, you don't just go to school, like, learn the basics, this, that, and the third. Like, you can pick what you wanna be, and it was, like, young kids like, they were like it was like a art class or something like that, and they were painting one of the bridges that we were coming and take pictures of, and that still to this day, it just blew my mind. It just blew
Mm.
my mind. I was just like, they looked so young, and they got their little,
Mhm.
papers out, and they sketching. It looked like, of course, like, I didn't see everybody's, but for what I seen, it looks beautiful. But you know how the human mind work. I already think
Yeah.
it's something amazing going on, so my
Yeah.
recollection is gonna be, like, 10 times bigger, but
Sure.
um,
Well, I mean, it is a great it's interesting because the history is, we go back before God.
yeah,
It seems that way anyway, right? We've got such a long history. And beautiful architecture. The buildings are amazing. And of course, I'm sure you went to see Buckingham Palace, right?
yes.
And it's like a fairy tale in a way, right? It's like a little fairy tale, a lot of it. Nelson's Column, Piccadilly Circus, Trafalgar Square. There's so many sights to see. And you're right. I mean, the best way to get around really is walking because a lot of those monuments are pretty close
Well,
together. By the time you go on the subway, or as we call it, the tube, right?
mhm.
You may as well have walked there, right? So, yeah. Did you get outside London or was it all inside London?
It was all London. Like I said, that it's been about I'm 5 years removed from traveling. Sometimes, like, I mix them all up together, but
Yeah,
I
I
just
do the
know,
same
like,
thing.
Germany, I bet Germany, New England, Paris, hope my producer jumps in. But, like, yeah, Germany, New England, Paris, Berlin, that was on
Oh,
tip of my tongue.
Berlin. I've never been
All
to Berlin. I heard Berlin is really cool.
Berlin is beautiful. So, like, all these sometimes they run together, but, like,
Yeah.
I keep it separated by the shirts and the memorabilia that I
Yeah.
bring back, and of course, pictures, is wonderful to be able to go back and look at the, pictures from Prague. Like I said, I've traveled so many different places. I was fortunate to just, like, see it, and I'm like, "Yeah," but I definitely remember, New England, and I wanna say I had a shirt, like yeah, I'm sorry, it might have been a beanie. It says something like not friendly or some I'll have to find it. I shoulda just put on all of my New England travel gear and had it set up in the
That
background.
would have been that would have been a bit of a shocker. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
exactly, but, man, I got shirts and things for days, just little trinkets and stuff
Yeah.
about, traveling to those places and just the architecture and everything like that. Sorry about that, we back on track. So, I know you wrote about it in the book, and I wanna talk about understanding relationship patterns. So, how can
Mm.
someone recognize the difference between real love and emo
Okay. Thanks for asking the easy questions. Okay, so we'll unpack that, right?
Yes.
So, what was the first part of the question again? Because there was a lot in there. What was the first part?
The first part was how can someone recognize the difference between real love and emotional dependency?
Mm. Okay. Well, somebody asked me this or something similar the other day. They said, "Can you be in love with someone and be totally dependent?" And the answer is yeah. I mean, you can be both, but if you're totally dependent on someone, you got to ask, is that healthy? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
for them or for you, right?
Yes, sir.
What I would say is no, right? Because you got to be, in a marriage or even in a relationship, you are two separate people coming together as a couple, right? To complement each other. You're both going to play different roles to make the relationship work.
Yes, sir.
And that's arguable in today's world, right? I mean, people say, you know what I mean. But I do believe that it could be old fashioned. I'm a dinosaur, right? I'm a boomer, right? So, I grew up with those values. But my belief is that you need to have your own independence. That you need to be an independent person separate from that other person. You need to have your own life. You need to have your own friends. You need to have certain things that you like to do that they won't. And they'll have things they like to do. They'll have their friends. You have your friends. Hopefully, those friends can come together and you can all be friends, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sometimes that's not possible, right? But that's the ideal, right? That your families will, get along. That's even probably more helpful, but it can happen. It can
Yes, sir.
happen, right?
Yes, sir.
But at the end of the day, it's about you two. And when you're totally dependent on somebody, they're probably going to take advantage of it. It's just human nature, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
so we teach people how to treat us, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that means setting boundaries.
Yep.
And if you're totally dependent on somebody, you have no boundaries,
Exactly.
and you're compromising who you really are because you're afraid to lose the other person, right? And that just isn't healthy. And eventually, what happens in most instances when people are totally dependent, they just get to the point and they think it's never enough.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? Because it isn't.
Yeah.
But that's the mirror, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
That's the mirror looking back at you and saying, "What are you doing?" You know, as it did for me, right? With that situation, I was giving myself away, right? So people will say, "Well, don't you know that?" When, yeah, I know it, but I forgot. Okay,
Exactly.
right?
Overthinking, understanding. We get it. Just like
You
sometimes
know,
we get lost in it.
we do, because we're human, right? I went on a podcast
Exactly.
recently, and it's called "The Secret Lives of Therapists."
D A secret. I gotta check that out. I know.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's good because it's just like we're human too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we can get into your life. Yes, we can help you, but we also need help, right?
Exactly. A lot of therapists have therapists, and people don't. Some people look at it negative, like, "Why does my therapist need a therapist?" Same
Yeah,
way your doctor needs a doctor. Like,
that's
there's
right.
some things they can't fit. It's
Yeah,
just like,
and
where are
as
we
much
going?
as you know, oh, oh, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to know how do you handle these talking conversations you identify that you allow, I guess you allow someone to treat you in a way that doesn't align with your boundaries. Let's say months down the line, you wake up and you're like, hey, I've given away, I have given my true self to this relationship and I want more with establishing my boundaries. How do you respond to that conversation?
All right. Well,
How do you change?
first of all, what's your name?
My name is Dwayne Page.
Say that again.
Dwayne Page.
Dwaylen, man, that's a cool name. I've never heard that before, Dwaylen. That is very original, and it kind of goes well with your second name. It almost sounds like a movie star or something. Anyway,
Yeah.
right? It's true, Victoria, right? It's kind of a
Yes,
cool
it
name, right?
does. Yes, it does.
Yeah,
It's a
all
very
right.
cool
Well,
name.
I'll stop evading the question then. So the question is
Can you repeat the question
no,
for
no,
the
I got it. I
audience?
think I got it, Dwayne. I'm not sure. All right. I think you're saying, how do you have that difficult conversation? Is that right?
Yeah, because like you said, you treat someone how to treat you.
Mhm.
And let's say you weren't aligned with your boundaries because you were love wake up one day and be like, I'm not happy. And I understand because I haven't met my boundaries.
Yes.
Now, how do I come and say, hey, by the way, you haven't been treating me
Yeah.
the right way?
It's a great question, man. It's a great question, which tells you the sooner you create boundaries, the better, right? But a lot of people don't. They just get in and just, oh, he's amazing and she's incredible and I love everything she does and a little smile and the way he walks and all that. And you overlook doing the things that will help you both create a lasting relationship. And so you put up with all that stuff. You notice it going along the journey, but you don't say anything because you don't want to. upset them and you don't want to lose them and all that. And then one day you kind of like, I got to say something. Like you said, you wake up one morning and you go, I'm not happy in this. So had you said it earlier, would have made it easier. But we're in a situation where that's where we are and we didn't. So, okay, now what are we going to do? Well, it's not going to be an easy conversation because you haven't had any conversations like that to begin with. So you're probably going to be a little nervous, number one. And a lot of people are not taught how to communicate, right? So they just kind of ad lib it and it usually ends up in a row, right? Because they're scared and then you manifest what you're scared of, right? But the best way to do it is to say, listen, first of all, don't do it off the cuff. Don't just like wake up in the morning and go, hey, I need to set some boundaries with you. It's probably
Yeah,
not going to go very
you
well.
suck. This is where it's at. It came out the blue, but you need to fix it. Matter of fact, I'm leaving. Then when
Yeah,
you fix
right.
it, I'll be back.
Yeah. If you don't want to have to move out, you may want to take your time with this, right?
Yeah.
So, get to a place where, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I know we don't have time right now, but could we go for coffee later? Or would you like to go for, create the environment when you're going to get a better response, right? Whatever that might be. I'd like to go for a walk later, or, really want to talk to you about something that's important to me. Can we find some time to get together? Well, usually they're going to say yeah because they want to know what the hell it is, right? Number
Exactly.
one. Anyway, so then when you get together, just lead into it. What do they say? You don't throw the water in the sea when it's scared of water, right? You got to take
Yeah.
your time, be patient, and then just say, listen, there's something been on my mind. I've been feeling a certain way, and I just want to share how I feel with you, right? Usually the person isn't going to say, get lost, I'm not interested, right? They're going to say, sure, right? And then you would say, well, to be honest, I feel like I've been losing myself. I feel like I've become too dependent on you, your opinions, what you think. And I feel like I'm losing myself. I'm losing my identity. I'm losing who I am. And I know you don't want that for me, do you? So now they got to commit to the fact they don't want you to do that, even though they might be enjoying the fact that you're doing everything for them, right? Right? Well, they're going to say, no, yeah, I just don't want you to be you. We're not going to say that, right? So I'd just like to talk a little bit about how we could set some boundaries so we could both be happy. And maybe you need to set some boundaries with me or tell me some things too. But that's the foundation of a great relationship because we're building trust. We are understanding each other. And I really want to make this work. How about you?
And I know that the producer is not recorded, so the audience may have a gap. So Imma do my best to fill in. Y'all will hear me and Dr. Edwards. The producer will come in and interject with questions, and we will do our best to repeat the question that the producer is asking. So y'all won't be like, what questions are getting answered right now? So we got y'all, I promise.
That happens when I'm doing an event sometimes, right? I'm on stage and there's I don't know how many hundreds of people out there, and someone will ask me a question and they don't have a microphone. And then I'm answering the question, what did he ask? What did he
Yeah. It keeps them engaged though, so
Yeah,
then
exactly. It keeps them
it's
wondering.
good.
Now
Might
that
just add the questions underneath. They like, what were they answering at this part? Like, yeah, watch all the way through for the recap of the
Well, you could
questions.
just say, "Can you listen more carefully? Listen up,
Exactly.
okay?"
I did want to ask one thing. I did want to add one thing that I learned through therapy. Because the producer did ask, like, how do you communicate with someone that they have overstepped your boundaries and not respected your boundaries? And one thing I had to learn through therapy was boundaries are what we set for ourselves. A lot of times we don't set boundaries, but we have standards. And so the
Mhm,
way that it was explained to me, if somebody has a barricade up because their standard is nobody comes through here without being checked first. That is not that's their boundary, and it's a
mhm.
hard cement or a guard standing there. A lot of times we have standards and we tell ourselves, "I don't want nobody coming into my house unannounced, or no one can, no trespassers on this property." But there's no boundaries set up. So a lot of times we feel like when someone steps into the yard, well, my boundaries, quote unquote, we say is nobody's supposed to be trespassing or nobody's supposed to come into my yard without me knowing, but we
Yeah,
did not set the boundary up. The
yeah,
boundary is not for the other person to respect. It's for us to respect with ourselves and say, this is how I want to be talked to, this is how I want to be treated, this is how, I woke up feeling this morning, and I know in the past it wasn't this, but this is the hard cement block that I have. And before you can get closer to my house, I need you to come here and be vetted. So that's just one thing that I learned that maybe could help, but standards versus boundaries, and boundaries and standards is not necessarily the same thing. Because you can have high standards and have no boundaries, and we all have find ourselves with a Venus flytrap romance, so we end up
Oh,
we end
yeah,
up
I
going
call it I
back.
called it a Venus flytrap relationship now. It's also known
Yeah,
as a toxic relationship.
yes, sir, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
to go back to
I like Venus flytrap. It sounds a little better.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah, right. So to
But
go back to what you said, I'll just put a spin on it a little bit.
yes, sir, of course.
So we all grow up in different households, right? And there are certain rules of the household, right? That we grew up with. So we just assume that everybody thinks the same way, and they don't, right? They grew up with a completely different set of rules. Like, your parents might have taught you never raise your voice.
Hmm.
And then the other person's parents were shouting at each other all the time. So they've got different rules, right? So, the wife might do something, and the guy goes, "What the hell?" And she's like, "You just don't do that, right?" And he might do something, and she just doesn't say anything, but you can tell, right?
Yes, sir,
So they're
exactly.
just different rules. So usually arguments are rules. People, we expect when we get together that everybody's going to know our rules, and they don't. They don't know our rules, right? So it might sound silly, but those are things you want to discuss too. Your rules and your values. What do you value most, right?
Yes,
So somebody
sir.
might value honor. We did this once with somebody, and like number 3 on her list was like an Amex Gold card. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you come up with that, right? And so, you might have to work on that. But, it might be number 1 value might be honesty, right? Somebody else's could be integrity or, speaking you whatever it is, right? And so you want your values to align, and if not align perfectly, at least to the point where you know what the priority values are of your partner.
Yes.
So you would know if somebody did or you did something that would cross over that rule or boundary, right? And you won't be as surprised. There's so many things that you just never taught growing up, though, right? I mean, we just
Exactly.
barge into a relationship thinking it's all going to be perfect, and we don't even realize the problems are going to come up because we really don't know each other and what's really important, you know, because we just assume, well, we're going to be the same as me, right?
Exactly. Or I'm gonna do the same thing as my parents, and you feel like those are your values, and then you get with someone who makes you challenge that thought process. Like, so who taught you that? Like, who taught you that this was that, or why? What part of you believes that? And you like, I don't know. I was just taught it. It's like, so how is that your value? Because I was taught it, but do you feel it? Like, do you actually believe it, or do you just feel like this is something that you value because, like you said, you grew up that way? So now
Yeah.
you're in a whole different way of trying to figure out and learn yourself
Yeah.
and be like, you know what? Like, I didn't always like, just like you said, children should be seen and not heard. And then, something could go on, or, like you say, you checked out my podcast, stuff would go on and be like, why didn't you say nothing? Well, I was taught that I was supposed to be seen and not heard. So if you didn't see it, I guess, you weren't supposed to hear from me about what happened, but that doesn't change the trauma, and now you taking that into another relationship. You're like, "Well, you didn't see me. You didn't see that I was upset." Like you said, as women, we we want people to be mind readers so bad. It's like, "You didn't
Well,
see that I was
because
different?"
this is my supposition on that. You tell me if this is true for you. So your boyfriend, spouse, husband, whoever, they do something that really pisses you off, right? But there's a part of you that doesn't want to have to tell them what they did because they should freaking know, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not telling you what you did. You should know what you did, and you should come
Exactly.
to me and you should make it right.
Exactly.
And
You should pay attention
the guy,
enough to figure it out.
the guy's going, I have no freaking clue, right? He cannot figure it out to save his life. He goes and sees his buddy, "Man, I don't know what the hell is wrong with her. I don't think I did anything. I've asked her 1,000 times, and she just says nothing." It's just telling you 1,000% there's something, right? You know what I mean? It's
You
so
need help?
funny.
No,
We're
I
just
don't. I don't. You need me to move? No, no, thank you. I
yeah.
got it.
Do you want a diamond bracelet? Nuh-uh.
I'm fine. I'm fine. No, thank you.
I don't want
I'll go
anything from
make one. Oh, nothing from you.
we're so funny because we're so different. The
Yeah.
guy's just going, "Just freaking tell me," right? And the missus is going, "Nope, not telling you."
And I have told you I'm acting different. You need to
Yeah,
tell
yeah, I've
me.
told you about
I told
exactly.
you
How could
I'm
you not
acting
know?
different.
So
Why do I have to spell it out? Like
instead
I'm
of
acting
asking me
different.
the same dumb question, go sit down and figure it out. It'll come into your head, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. 1,000%, 1,000%.
Yeah.
No, I think that goes perfect. Like you kind of already hit on it. One of the other questions I had for you was, how does a person emotional blueprint impact their decision making within relationships? But you kind of already like blew it out the park. But if you feel like you have any more to
It's
elaborate
like
on with that, let me
it's
know.
like it's stamped on us from when we're kids, right?
Yeah,
You know? This is what we're taught. Like, I was just thinking a few minutes ago about how our perception of relationships also starts when we're kids, So when I was growing up, and this is gonna sound so antiquated, and it's so ridiculous, but it's true. When we grow up, we watch cartoons and we watch movies that tell us, you know, the guy has to save the damsel in distress, right? You gotta go rescue her, then you gotta save her, then you gotta fix her. Rescue, save, and fix.
yeah,
I mean, and you don't even realize it's unconscious, right?
yep, yep,
And, you now we live in a world where there aren't any damsels in distress, right? Nobody needs to be rescued. They certainly don't need to be saved, and if you try and fix them, 'em, you're gonna get hurt. So,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So and then we're like, "Why is everybody getting divorced?" It's like they have a totally different perception of what a relationship would be like, you know? So it's things change, and sometimes change is painful. Change is painful, right?
Yeah,
It's
for
like,
sure.
you know, people come into relationships with all kinds of ideas of what a relationship should be like based usually on their childhood.
Yeah,
And now you got to change it all around,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Usually you don't have a lot of time, right? Because
yeah,
people are like, if you don't shape up, I'm shipping out, right?
yeah.
So,
I'm not sticking around for you to figure it out.
yeah, and of course, way back when you got married, it was pretty much for life,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You
oh
know,
yeah.
I just got to reload site. Do I click on that or what?
Oh, you're fine. It should.
Okay, I got it.
It's still
I got it
going.
fixed. I got it fixed.
Yeah,
Yes.
there we go. It's still going. You should be fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's not easy, man. It's not
Yeah,
easy. So you gotta you gotta keep up with what's going on. And what is also happening at the same time is this huge paradigm shifts.
yeah.
A paradigm shift is a massive change in consciousness, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
look how fast it's happened. But maybe I was gonna say, look how fast it's happening, and then I'm gonna talk about women's empowerment, and there's gonna be women going, "This has not been quick, let me tell you. You assholes have been running this freaking world for way too long. This
I be
did not
having to
happen
catch
overnight."
myself. Yeah, I
You
be
know what I
like,
mean?
"What is this?" And then you gotta go back
Yeah,
and
what do
fix
you
it because you see the comments coming. Like, no, that is not. And I got what you were saying, but this is not.
alright, but it went slow and then it went fast. Let's just say
Exactly,
that, right? It went
exactly.
slow for a long time, and then it went
Somebody
really fast.
walked so somebody else could run.
Yeah, you go, right? Yeah, yeah. So, guys are like their heads are spinning. They're like, "What?" And then women are saying, "I don't need a man." And the man's going, "Whoa, whoa, how's this gonna work? If you don't have any men in the world, we're all gonna die, right?"
Yeah, no,
So, but of course they don't mean that. They just mean that they don't need a man in their life to be happy, right?
exactly. Or for every single decision. We definitely need men.
You
We
do
def
not
we definitely
need
need
their
men.
opinion all the time, and you don't need them to what? What do you say? Fix? Fix? And they're like, "What do you mean you don't need me to fix anything? That's what I do. That's why God put me here."
That's what you were taught.
That's right. That's what they believe, right? So when you're telling them about something they don't know, just shut the fuck up and listen, right? Nobody needs you to fix anything. They're just talking, right? They're just
Well,
talking and letting it out. And they're like, no, 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 no. I can fix that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Not a problem. And they think they're going to be the hero if they can fix it. And they end up in the doghouse.
Yep. Because I just needed you to listen. There's nothing to be fixed.
Yeah.
I'm not accusing you of being a problem, but you are my person, and I just need you to
to
listen,
listen.
not hear me and start, freaking finding 1 plus 1 is 2, and that's what I just need you to listen, just listen. Yeah,
It could be so easy. It
yeah,
could be so easy, right? Yeah.
yeah,
You got no problem. Shut up, listen, and we're all good.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
Yeah. It's hey, listen, relationships are a very powerful, interesting dynamic. And
yeah,
everything is a relationship. You have a
exactly. Oh, yeah.
relationship at work, you have a relationship with your friends, with your family,
With
you have a
yourself.
relation you have a relationship with money, everything
Yep,
is a relationship, right?
yep.
Yeah. But the most important one is the one with your partner. And apparently we're all pretty much screwing. I mean, I've screwed up more than anybody, so I got nothing to talk about, right? I've well and truly screwed up,
I
which
gotta
is
let you talk
why
to some of the military buddies. They could be like,
yeah,
"Oh, boy, I tell you."
yeah. And, now I laugh, when people
Yeah,
say, "You can't believe what she did. You can't
yeah.
believe this." And I go, "Really? Nuh-uh. Well, how did you help?" "What do you mean, how did I I thought you could fix everything. Fix that."
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you said, "Yeah, what did you do to make that better? How did you do
Yeah.
that?"
Yeah, you should probably get divorced and find somebody else exactly the same. What do you think?
And that goes into that's it's funny because you're hitting all of the points, and like you said, you are one of the guests that we feel like in the recent past and future that aligns so perfectly with what we're speak about in this
Yeah,
podcast. And I
yeah,
mean, like, it's just like you like, of course, like we send the notes over, but like you said, you didn't even get to look over them. But we're speaking about some of the same things, and that was one of our questions for you. Was like, how do we stop getting into the same decision, like impact and getting in with the same person? Like, we make this decision that this relationship is not working and it's this person's fault. So I'm gonna go and get into this relationship. But now you feeling like you're repeating the same relationship with a different person.
yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Before you answer, Steve, can I add to this too? Because you spoke about before marriages earlier,
Mhm.
and you said you had to realize that you were the person. So it sounds like you had to do some self reflection and realize your pattern.
Oh, yeah.
What were the steps you had to take to identify your pattern? 'Cause a lot of people can go through and are oblivious, or maybe a little delusional when it comes to their pattern.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that they've been with you all your life. They were created when you were a child, and it was people that said things to you, circumstances, environmental, social, ethnic, all these things, the community you live in, all those things, which is your environment, the school you went to, all these people that are around you teaching you in their perception, in their belief, the way things are. And they're not, I mean, I don't think there's a how to raise children school, right? And so what tends to happen is parents unconsciously take out their childhood on their children.
Yeah.
They think, well, in comparison to what my father did with you, you've got it easy,
Oh man.
Well,
Man.
what did your father do? Well, he used to, send us down the mill for sixpence every 3 months. When we got home, we'd slice us in two with bread knife and then dance around on our grave singing hallelujah. And you try and tell that to the young kids of today and they won't believe you, right? They
Exactly.
always had it worse, right?
Exactly.
So what we're getting is nothing in comparison to what they're getting, at least in their mind. But for us, it's freaking trauma, right? Usually.
Yeah.
So we got to go back to that. So I'll give you an example here, right? So when I'm in this crazy relationship with Tomas, who, by the way, she's amazing. She's an amazing woman, and I'm so grateful she came into my life. She taught me all these amazing things. I've worked with Tony Robbins. I've spent all this time working with these amazing people, got a PhD in spiritual counseling, but none of that compared to the lessons that she taught me,
Yes, sir.
either consciously or unconsciously. So I am
Yeah.
really incredibly grateful for her for that. I wouldn't want to go through it again. Let's just be
No.
clear, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah. Of
but the
course.
fact
Of
I
course.
went through it, I'm better off, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because as you know in the book, I set no boundaries with her. Well, I tried to set boundaries. She just walked all over them, right? I mean,
Bulldozer. That's what I said.
goes through them, right?
Bulldozer.
I don't know what the hell to do, right? But I also know I tried to hold her accountable, and then she would just call me, and I just melt, right? And then I just,
Yeah.
well, what's the point, right? And then she'd be back, right? Until no, until not anymore, and but that's in the second book, right? Anyway, so yeah, so really looking at your childhood patterns. So I said I was going to give you an example. I was going to give you an example of a belief that I have that I mentioned earlier. It sounds simple, and it is when you say it. It's not easy to live it, and this changed my life. And I'll give you an example how that showed up in the story, right? So, as you may remember, we argued all the time, right? We were breaking up all the time, and that's just me trying to set a boundary, which is a waste of time. But anyway, we were broken up. She'd gone on a binge somewhere. She'd stolen the Bentley. I didn't know where the hell she was, and I had to go away on a speaking engagement, right?
Yep.
So I leave, and of course, she knows my pattern, right? She knows when I'm going to be leaving and going somewhere. So she came back while I was gone. She broke in the house and she set the alarms off, right? So just recently to this happening, there'd been some criminal activity in the neighborhood, and somebody called the police, and they were very slow to respond. So the director of the community called the police chief and chewed him out and said,
Mm.
"Listen, we pay all this money in taxes, and you were slow, and you need to get, whatever." So obviously the police chief wasn't happy about that. So then this alarm goes off, and so he sees this as his chance to really show how they can come out really hot, right?
Yeah.
So they come out with like six squad cars, two SUVs. They got all the police dogs running through people's gardens. All the lights are going on in the neighborhood. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, they made sure that everybody knew they were there, right? And of course, they get there, and she's sitting in the Bentley convertible, like the damsel. She was playing the damsel in distress, like she's got them all wrapped around her finger, right? So they call me, right? And by this time, we're all almost on first name terms, right? They've been out to
Yeah.
the house so many times, right? And they know we're the crazy one. Uh, so anyway, so they said, they call me up and go, "Yeah, she's here." I go, "Okay." They go, I go, "But listen, under no circumstances, let her in that house. Because, if they let her in there, it's going to be a nightmare, right?" So he says, "Well, let me call you back." So he calls me back and he said, "But listen, I just got off the phone with the police chief. He says, we got to let her in." So 3 days later, I come home. She's gone, obviously, right? She's not there. And I walk in the house. Everything's fine.
Mm.
Everything's fine. I'm like, no way. So I go in the kitchen. I put the kettle on. I go out and I come back in, and the kettle's not boiling. So I go look at the kettle, and she snipped the wire at the back of the kettle,
Yep.
right?
That
So now what?
that sounds
Now,
about us.
now your brain goes, that's not the only cable she snipped, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every electrical cable in the house, TVs, everything, right?
Yeah.
So I sit down, I go, I know that's not either. I know that's not it either, right? So when I was a kid, my mom used to send me to school clothes and school clothes that were 5 times too big minimum, right? My overcoat would still fit me today. And of course, the kids are merciless, right? They were teasing me, humiliating me, and the teachers weren't any better either. You probably remember the the album by Pink Floyd, The Wall, right? It's a
Yeah.
true story, Edward, so whatever. So by the time I was 9, I was buying my own school clothes, right? I used to sell cigarettes because you could buy a pack of 10, but nobody
And
could
then
afford to
sell
buy
them
10. So I
singles.
used to buy the 10 and then sell one at a time,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was buying my own clothes, and from that point on, clothes were very important to me. I always had to look immaculate, right? And anyway, so at this point, I'm making a lot of money, right? So my wardrobe is to die for, right? And I go, "Oh my God, no, please, no." Right? So I go to the closet and I look in and everything looks fine. But then I go in the closet and I pull the clothes back. She has cut them all up, right? Cut off everything up. And this is probably gonna hurt you more than me, Victoria, because she'd also cut up all my shoes, right? Can you imagine, right? So now I have this belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you.
Yeah.
Now, if you think that happens instantly, you're insane, right?
Exactly.
So you have
Exactly.
your human being, right? I'm so freaking pissed. I'm so freaking angry, frustrated. I say I never wanted to hurt her, but I did want to kill her,
Yeah.
right? So this goes on for a while, and then I think I actually blacked out at one point because I can't remember quite a huge chunk of time. But anyway, the next day, it was either 24, 36 hours later, I finally slumped in a chair. And then I go, okay, so this happened for me. Really? This is going to be good. Let me hear it. Right. So I'm having this conversation with myself, right? So it doesn't happen immediately. It's a process. You got to be committed to it because it's a while before your emotions are going to come back into balance, right? So the first thing that came into my mind that kind of tempered it a little bit, I go, well, it's only clothes. I mean, you can replace clothes, right? And then my brain goes, yeah, but they're really good, nice clothes, man. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? So then you talk yourself out of it again, right? So finally, I got it. It's like the light bulb just goes on because you're committed to thinking it. And I go, attachment.
Yeah.
I was attached to those clothes. Now, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with having nice clothes, but if you're attached to it, it means you think it's part of who you are, right?
Yep. Yep.
Right. And I go, I am not those clothes, right?
Yep.
And so that was the beginning of the process of letting it all go, all of
Yeah.
it, right? And that didn't happen overnight either, right? But that
Yeah.
was the catalyst, right? Now here's my point though. If I didn't have that belief, I'd still be angry at her to this day
Yeah.
for doing that to me instead of realizing she did it for me, for me
Yeah.
to recognize that I was attached to more than I ever thought, because I'd always thought, "I'm not attached." You know what I mean? People used to say, "Well, you got a lot of stuff. What if you didn't have it?" I'm like, "I'll be fine. I'll be the same person."
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize how much I was attached. So, these are the things that she helped me to see, right?
Yeah.
That it wasn't about what she did to me, it's what she did for me to help me realize things that were really important, you know? And as I began to let more and more of that stuff, the material will go, the more freedom I had,
Yeah.
right? And you begin to realize that the reason they're called possessions is because they possess you. They took time and energy to get them. You have to work your ass off to get them. Then you got to work your ass off to keep them. And
Yep.
then you work your ass off to get the new ones because those are going to be outdated before you know it. And you can't let that image fall away. So you got to
Yep.
have the latest and greatest. It's a never ending cycle, which means you get all that stuff and you never have time to enjoy anyway,
Yeah.
you know? So less is more. People say, well, how do you know? I go, because I know, right? Because I've done it. I made the money. I've had all that stuff. I've had all the material thing. I had everything you can imagine. I had a mansion, right? I had a sex room, and I'm kind of missed that, but you know what I mean, right? It's a part of evolution, right? You're evolving as not necessarily as a human being, but as a spiritual being, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not, and I believe this. I know you do too. We're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spirits, right? Having a
Having a
human
human
experience.
experience.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So,
And
did I answer that question right? I'm not sure.
I was finna say, so to the audience, so we asked about what can we do when people find themselves repeating the same pattern? And
Oh
then
yeah,
the producer asked, how do you make yourself aware that you're doing the same pattern? Like
yeah,
how do you fix that? And I'll say from what I gathered from what you said is when the things happen to you and specifically like the clothes because you wasn't too mad about the electrical cords because there wasn't necessarily the possession that you felt most empowered by from your upbringing, but the
yeah,
clothes were a big thing that kind of had you distraught because it was something that you felt like was your identity. So what I
yeah,
take from that is repeating patterns of trying to figure out what somebody is triggering in a relationship. Is it something that their boundary that they're crossing that you feel like is your identity that is actually your identity or just something that's possessing you and you have this idea of yourself. Like you shouldn't treat me like that because I'm an alpha woman or I'm an alpha male or this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, that ideal is possessing you, but that's not who you are. Like if people didn't see you as quote unquote a alpha, whatever, would you still find value in yourself? So that's what I took away from that. And just to bring it back around for the guest but I will let the producer speak for himself. D, did you answer the question that you were posing?
Just curious because I wanted to know what type of work was done aside from a therapist or a counselor.
Yeah.
Because again, sometimes you just don't even feel like that you have, and maybe the partner that you're dating, they don't even communicate to you that you're being had. They don't know how.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because the truth is you don't need a therapist, right?
Yeah.
The truth is you can figure it out on your own,
Yeah.
although it is difficult.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it's difficult. Number one is because we live in a society that tells us we're victims,
Yep.
that tells us it's happened to us. And then we find people that are going to give us sympathy.
Yeah.
Nobody wants sympathy.
Yep.
Everybody wants empathy, right?
Yep.
For someone to be able to relate, they don't necessarily understand, but they need to be able to relate. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult for your spouse to give any therapy to you, right? Because you don't want to listen to them, right? And then it's even harder to do it for yourself,
Yeah.
but you can with practice. So
Yes.
here's what I do. Well, first of all, I have a therapist, right? But which helps a lot, right? But also, what I can do on the fly now is I can go back into my childhood and I can really usually because you take that thing that's happening right now and you look through your past all the way to your childhood and you see the mirror there. You see, well, let me give you an example, right? Can you give me an example, right? I was thinking the day I'm just gonna do this. All right. Um, okay, so I'm always and I think a lot of people will say this too, but maybe it's the same reason, slightly different but similar. I'm always I always side with the victim, right? But they're not really a victim, but you know what I mean? With the underdog is the better word, right? Underdog,
Yeah.
right? And then I want to help them or maybe even save them, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, who do I really want to save?
Is it
Myself,
the
right? It's me, right?
is it
It's
if
me.
is it them or you, the image that you have of yourself?
Well, it's because my father was a bully.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I see a bully, it just triggers me, right?
Yeah.
Because I now have empathy with that person. But what you got to come to, this is not easy, right? So you go, at some point, you have to come to the understanding that everybody plays a valid role, right? So I used to feel like, when I was a kid and I saw another kid I get in fights all the time with bullies, right? But I wasn't helping anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I way later in life when I see parents raising kids and the kid would come home and he was getting bullied. He's gotta stand up for himself. You have to let him work it out. And you gotta let him stand in his own power, set his own boundary. Because if you do that for him, he's never gonna be able to stand up for himself in
Yeah.
life, right? Now I never got that. Maybe I should have got it a lot sooner, but eventually I understood that the bully plays a role.
Yeah.
A valid role. And that also helped me heal my relationship with my father in the end, right? To say, but also recognizing, when I was a kid and I would try and stand up to him, it would just make him worse, right? But now
Yeah.
later in life, and I don't let him bully anymore, he backs down, right? Because
Yeah.
all bullies are really cowards, right? They're really
Yeah.
cowards, right?
Yeah.
So, but it takes you a while to figure that out. So that was looking back at my life into my childhood to get that. Then I had issues with, being heard, standing in my own power. I had issues with intimacy. I had issues with being vulnerable. But those all came to my we call it realization because of looking back at my childhood and recognizing that those patterns had been with me my entire life. Another pattern is when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was run away from home
Yeah.
because the environment was so stressful, right? And part of the reason I had to bang my head on a pillow and ended up in an asylum, all that stuff, right? So you bring that into your relationship. As I said, so what am I looking for here? I left home when I was 16 and I had my own home when I was 17.
Mhm.
So I was a runner, right? I was a runner running away from home, but I was also an achiever, right? I could get, if I really focused on something, was desperate enough to get away from home, I'll find a way, right?
You finna hit on a powerful point. Come
Right.
bring it on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point is I was running, but when I got away from home, Victoria, I didn't stop running. I kept going
Yeah.
all my life.
Yeah.
You talk about all the different places you lived. I was all over the place, right? So I
Yeah.
lived in just about every major city in the UK. I came to America. I've lived in 16 different cities in America. I've been to 48 of the 50 states. I'm
Oh,
a runner,
man.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the saying is wherever you go, there you are, right?
Exactly.
So, and what would happen is when I was a kid, I wanted to run away because I was overwhelmed. I was just overwhelmed with the stress. So I wanted to run away. Perfect analogy. And I remember this from when I was a kid. Across the street, there was a dog, right? A little terrier, but he had like a Napoleon syndrome. You know what I mean? He could be every dog. Didn't matter how big he was going to show this dog, right? He's going to show this bigger dog to the point where he used to chase cars. He used to chase cars down the road. And of course, the car's driving away. He thinks the car is running away from him because
Yeah.
he's such a big, vicious dog, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, one day he's chasing this car, and for some reason, the car stopped really
Mm.
fast. And he comes running along, bang, into the back of the car. And he hurts himself, right? So he's whimpering and he starts running in the opposite direction.
Mm.
What was he running away from? The pain.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? He was running away from the pain. He thought if he ran fast enough, he could get away from the
From
pain.
the pain. Yeah.
That was me running away from my pain, right?
Yeah.
Thinking if I ran fast enough, I'd get away, but I was just dragging it behind me, right?
Man, yeah, I was waiting on you to bring it around, loving this episode. Yes, exactly. I was waiting on you to bring it
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, dragging it around with me everywhere I went, right? And so, whenever I was in a relationship or a marriage, when I got so overwhelmed I couldn't take it anymore,
Time to get
I
out of
just
there.
ran away, right?
Time to get out of there.
I ran away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, in fact, one of my girlfriends once said, you're a runner. You know that, right? And I went, "What are you talking about?" And she was so right.
I think even like I know a lot of times in the episode, like it'd be great guests on here, and they'll have a point, and you have lived it. And the same for me. Like I'll say something and it's normal, and somebody be like, "You left that point way too quick." I'll just love the like where you took it for you. Like I started as a child, and people don't look at it. Like one of the things that I just took from that, the hugest part was you said I was a runner and I'm also an achiever, and a lot of people don't think that those could be the same thing or a
Mm,
person could possess both. They feel like if you succeed and that means you have to go through some type of level of failure to get to that success, but you don't realize that I could fail here, stop here, go somewhere else and be successful, and this doesn't work. I could do that. So I thought that was so powerful how you're saying like I was a runner, but I was also an achiever. So you when you get to someone, they tell you like, "Hey, you a runner," and you're like, "What?" Like all this stuff that I done did and I can go out here and do this run, complete this business or do this, and it's like it doesn't matter. In this relationship, you're still running. Like you still are running. You're still are not able to complete the smallest things, the smallest like being here for me or like you said earlier, just listening to me and hearing me out. So I thought that was a point that I loved it. Like my ears perked up like the dog you was talking about as soon as you said it. I'm like, yeah, there's about to be a good point to be made home because you can be a runner and you can have all of these accomplishments and like you said, be this achiever and still be running away from who you are as a person. And like you said, running from the pain, like it doesn't go nowhere. You just learn to run with it. And whenever you get overwhelmed and somebody shows you a mirror of this, like break the perception that you have of yourself, there you go. You're gone again. You're like, it's time to go. I just hit that car. Let me go back this way because this is not right. Let me go back that way. So I love that. I didn't want you to leave that point too early.
More about achieving I don't know if you may want to just put like my question captions on the podcast. Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
Lo
I know. We keep forgetting to repeat his.
I've been repeating the best that I
Oh, you
could
have?
at the end,
Okay,
so,
good, good, good,
I've
good.
been repeating, at the end to go through. So the
Yeah,
producer's
'cause they're really
asking
good
for Mr.
questions. Yeah,
Stevens to
yeah.
hit on achievements since we're already there.
with the trauma that you went
Mhm,
through, you reached the achievement of becoming a spiritual counselor
mhm.
with the self reflection uh, and the achievement of becoming an artist. That through both of us, that's a lot of self reflection. How did it feel to take that dead man to bring out right?
Yeah,
That's
okay.
Great
It
question,
it
great question.
it is a great question, right? Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but so first of all, as I've said quite a few times now, nothing happens to you, everything happens for you.
Yeah,
Okay, good. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. So because I, had no self-esteem when I was a kid, because I went through all that pain. So pain is a good thing, right? And you go, what? Well, what I mean by this is, you know, pain is a form of resistance, right? So if you want to build a muscle, you got to have resistance, right? You're not going to grow
yep,
stronger, right? And when you go through these struggles in life, it creates something for you that you're not born with. I always tell people, listen, everything you'll ever need is within you.
yep,
Courage is within you, right? Determination is within you. Persistence is within you, but something has to draw it out, right? But resilience is not in you. What do I mean? The resilience is when, you keep falling down, but you keep getting up.
you got a
You've
bed to
heard
bounce
that,
back.
when you say it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you pick yourself up, right?
Yes, sir, yes,
And you're
sir.
never a failure until you give up, right?
Exactly. Yes, sir, yes, sir.
So I was driven hard because of what had happened to me, right? I was constantly trying to prove myself. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah,
And that was so strong. It drove me that whatever I got into, I had a very high, so now I've taken it as my identity, right? Which is really not true. But I say, people say to me, you're very intense. And now I say, I take that on now. I go, I'm just a very intense guy.
yep,
But I've taken that on, right? And that intensity comes from these things as well. So when you say I've achieved those things, which technically I have, but if you don't feel that you've really achieved anything yourself, then what was the point, right? You know what I'm saying? You don't really feel I didn't really feel like I'd achieved it. And people say, "Man, you got this," and I go, "Yeah, you think?" Yeah, never thought of it like that, really. You've spoken in front of thousands of people, and you don't know that. Yeah, I guess. I never really think about it. So anyway, so what I did throughout my life, Waylon, is I would create success, and then I would implode it.
yeah.
I worked for Tony Robbins, left. When I did my own events, stopped. Did this, did that. Because I would get to the point because of that intensity, which is driven by
Bluetooth
pain, right?
disconnected.
Driven by pain. Because I had that intensity, I always went to the point of exhaustion,
Yep,
as we call it burnout, right?
yep.
And then when you get there, you don't want to do that anymore because it's just like you associate the exhaustion with,
With
"I don't
the
wanna do that
achievement.
anymore," right?
Yep,
With that
yep.
and then so you let it implode, and then what would I do? I'd recreate it in something else, right? So, recognizing that pattern, realizing that, whatever I achieved, it wasn't gonna fill the void in me, wasn't gonna fill the hole that was in me, that as Victoria would say, I kept dragging that freaking hole around with me as well, right? Nothing was gonna fill that but me. Me accepting myself. So I call a lot of the work that I did in the book what is called shadow work,
Yeah,
recognizing not only these pieces of myself that are given away, but also the dark side to my nature, right? that we're not all, all full of light all the time. There's light and darkness within us, and we have to accept both. We have to accept ourselves for who we are, right? So there's a bit of darkness in the story, right? There's no way I'm writing that book, and there's no way I could get out at the end and go, "See, I told you I was perfect." I mean, all my flaws are there, right? What an asshole. He left her in Vegas. How could you leave her in Vegas, right? And how could you do this or that? I was not innocent by any stretch. I threw her
Yeah.
out of the house God knows how many times. And people are going, "You son of a bitch." She said, "It's her house. He's living there, right?" I go, "I know, but I got overwhelmed, okay?" Do you know what I mean? It's freaking hilarious.
Wow.
But we're all funny. We're all freaking human. I read a book once by Joseph Campbell, and I'd heard about him for a long time. Actually, I was gonna, but I don't know why. I just got this out early, which is kind of funny. I first came about Joseph Campbell from one of Tony Robbins' workbooks at an event called Date with Destiny. And it just captured me. This is what it says, the quote in the back of the book. It says, "People say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that what we're seeking is an experience. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive.
Yep.
So that your life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances with our own innermost being and reality. What we actually feel is the rapture of being alive."
Yeah.
And one of the things that, Tamaz and I did for each other is we made each other feel alive, right?
Yeah.
Because there was just a lot of excitement and intensity in that. So, anyway, the book that I read, because then I found a book of his, I didn't even know what he did. He actually talks about myths, right? So finally, I find some of his books in the bookstore, and I picked up a book called Myths to Live By. And so usually when I'm going to buy a book, I'll open it to a page arbitrarily and I'll see if I can find something in there that makes me excited about getting the book, right? And the thing it said that I'll never forget this changed my life actually. And it sounds silly, but it said, "It's not the perfection we love in other people. It's the imperfection." And he says, "Who would want to live with someone who's perfect? How boring would that be?" Right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's the imperfection that we see each other is drawn. And it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yep.
It's what we love about him. It's also what drives us crazy, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, and so what was one of the things she helped me realize is because, like I said, she would I'd complain about something with her, and it's in the book, and she would she was so smart. I mean, yes, she was manipulative, but she was very smart, right?
Yeah.
So she'd just look at me like, "What are you talking about?" You know? You knew what you were getting, right? When you decided to be with me. You knew I was gonna be a handful. She said, "I'm never gonna be a normal person." But you don't want normal. You love this, right? And I
Yep.
go, I can't really argue with her, right? She's freaking right. Yeah. So, yeah, so, achievement is an illusion, right?
Yeah.
It's not real.
So fleeting.
It's a form of distraction, really. But again, it's to distract you from who you really are. And my belief is, and it's just a belief, beliefs are not true. We all have different beliefs, right? But I do believe that in order to have what Joseph Campbell talked about, the feel the rapture of being alive, we have to get back to being who we really are. And who we really are is not stuff, right? It's not achievement. It's not, what do they call those? Awards on a wall or any of that. And all that becomes meaningless. And one of the things that really taught me that, another experience I had, was the Buddhist monks go on tour. And they came here to Sarasota and I went to see them. And they were here for like a week. And they had a room that they set up for them to, they create these sand mandalas, right? Beautiful artist mandalas, like a picture, right? And they blow sand. And my God, it just blows your mind how beautiful it is, right? All the different colors of sand. And it takes them a week. And there's a bunch of them doing it, right? And then at the end, I'm thinking, man, I would love to take that home. That thing could be worth a fortune, right? I could put that on a wall. I could glue it, whatever. And then what they do, they take these metal blades and they just push all the sand in the middle into a pile and they
Mm,
destroy it. Then they take all that sand down to the river and they just throw it in the river. Is to say that nothing is permanent.
yeah,
Don't be attached because you go, "Ah," right? They throw in the river, you go, "Oh," right? So don't be attached. Nothing is permanent. It's about the impermanence of life. But what is permanent is you.
yeah,
That's the only thing that's permanent. And so I've tried to learn that. And I have to a large degree. But when I was going through this experience, obviously I'd got a lot of stuff around me by that time, right?
yeah,
And again, I thought I was impervious to being attached to anything. But, you know, the creative force through everything said, "Nuh-uh, you're attached to stuff, and we're gonna be working on that," right?
yeah,
Which was a blessing, because now less is more.
yeah. I know that I would keep you here all day, but I did have one that I wanted to hit on that we kind of touched on, but not when it comes to like, and I want to tie it into what you're speaking about now. When we're talking about the experience of life, and we talked about intimacy, and of course, like sex and stuff goes on with that, and it's something that we can tangibly do that I feel like does give that experience of living almost as a high. And sometimes we do get attached to people that we're able to do that with. Are you willing to elaborate on that? Or do you have any thoughts about like how sex and intimacy can kind of get us wrapped up in relationships and keep going back to places where we probably shouldn't go, but it's one of those human, not even just, just what is it, synonymous with just humans, just this life experience because we see animals and I have 4 dogs and in my mind they're all siblings, but I get reminded every day like that's a dog and that dog doesn't know that that dog is his sister and it's just like he sees face lights up and want to kiss all on her and do all this and it's like as humans and as myself like you know intimacy and sex is such a big thing for us. It's such a big thing for us. And in my mind, like you said, beliefs are not real, but I do believe it's like one of those tangible things that give you experience. Like, this is what I was sent. This is what I was created for to be alive. Like, this is amazing. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that.
Okay, all
I'm
right. All
kidding,
right.
I'm kidding,
No,
I'm
I know,
kidding.
I know. I checked the book out. I checked the book
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Okay, wow, this is a deep one. And
out.
so this, all this stuff that happened in the book happened 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all come back because I've been writing about it and then talking about it, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
so the lessons are still coming up for me, right? Just the other day, I was walking around the house and a light bulb went on and I went, intimacy.
Yeah,
I got issues around intimacy, right? Because of my patterns in my childhood, right?
yeah, yeah,
Now, there's different types of intimacy, right? So I talk about intimacy in the book in
yeah,
terms of with your partner, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I talk about sharing your deepest, sometimes your darkest secrets, sharing your sexual fantasies, sharing parts of yourself that you probably never share with anybody else, and you probably shouldn't, right? However, once you do that, you've deepened your relationship. Now you're getting into intimacy
yeah,
because now you are putting so much trust in your partner and they know something about you that nobody else does.
yeah,
And if they understand that, now you've got a tremendous intimacy, right?
yeah,
And people
yeah.
try and create this in different ways. They'll have names for each other, stupid names sometimes, right? Right? Or coochie whatever it is, right? But it's that between them, right? Or they'll have what they call inside jokes, but only
Yeah,
they know what it is, right?
yeah.
That's a form of intimacy.
Exactly. Oh, man.
And
It's such a
then,
great episode.
and then sharing things that you might feel even ashamed of sharing, right? And then, so if someone shares their deepest sexual fantasy, I mean, it might actually not be possible to do that because some of the fantasies are so crazy, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Listening without judgment.
Yep. Yep.
And then, I'm writing another book right now. I'm writing a fiction book
Oh, wow. Okay.
where this, the main character is called Aurelia, right? And so she goes through some terrible trauma and she miscarries and then she finds out she can't have children. So she's traumatized by this because she knows her husband wants to have kids. Anyway, the point is, she's kind of gone, almost catatonic for like 9 months, right? And he's trying to bring her back. And then he's out one day and she's walking around the living room and his computer's there. And she just happened to flip the lid and there's all this pornography, right?
Mm.
And she looks what he's looking at. And, after everything she's been through, she feels completely crushed, right? Devastated. So then she goes to see her sister in law, right? And tells her, right? So this is his sister, right? And she said, well, what was he looking at, So he's looking at all this BDSM, whatever. Anyway, she goes, that's nothing, right? She says to her, God, me and, what her husband's name is, like, we do worse than that. And she says, well, I don't know what to do. And she says, well, look, you got two choices. You can vilify him for doing that, or you can join him, right?
Yeah.
Maybe watch it together, find out what he likes, what he doesn't like, and what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, maybe you could be that for each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it's kind of funny because then she starts going to, speak that she goes to an expert in BDSM, and so she gets her to teach her all the stuff, right? She's got to walk around in the heels and she falls over and she does all this until eventually she can do it. And then one day he comes home and there she is, right? And so then, anyway, my point is, I want that to be an inspiration to people to say, look, don't judge the person, you know, be with them to whatever extent you can, right? I mean, obviously, some
Exactly.
of it needs to stay a fantasy, but,
Yeah.
there are things you can do together to fulfill those fantasies. It spices it up, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, so where does my issue with intimacy come from? Well, couple of things. One is my mom had never been demonstrative, right? She never read me a book to go to sleep. She would just come in and switch the light off and go. That's a form of intimacy that you get
Yeah.
with your mother, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, at school, when I'm told I have a small dick, that made me really scared of physical intimacy, right?
Exactly. Because you
And
taught it
so,
has to be big, and women do not should be painful.
yeah, so that made me very kind of afraid of being too intimate, right? Which then, so first of all, because you got a small dick, you got to be really overachiever in the bedroom, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was a big overachiever in the bedroom, right? And so, usually women are going to be pretty impressed.
Yeah.
And I even joke about it. And I did this from when I was a kid. I said, listen, whatever you do, don't tell your friends.
Yeah.
And then they tell the friends, right? And then the next thing that's gonna happen, you get a call in the middle of the freaking night,
You gotta show the friend.
You know what I mean? Yeah, right. So anyway, so that was a good thing that I came very good in the bedroom, and I didn't care about penetration, and so I was never worried about getting pleasure myself.
Yeah.
I was all about giving my partner pleasure, right? Any way, shape, or form, and I didn't care about that stuff, whereas a lot of guys are intimidated by some of that stuff, right? I'm like, "I don't
Yeah.
care," right? A lot of people were intimidated because she was 6'5" in her heels, and I'm like, "Taller the better for me. Give me how high can you go?" You know what I mean? I didn't care. But so I became, it was more about voyeurism for me, really, right? Yeah. But that has a downside because you need to be physically intimate with your
Yeah.
partner. You know what I mean? It's a different kind of thing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I know you know what I mean. So, yeah. So, and that's why predominantly for me, sex has been about those things I did and I told about in the book, right?
Yeah.
There's not physical intimacy. That's not physical intimacy, right? And so I get that. And I've tried it. I'm just not good at it. It's something I'm working on. I'm working on so much, right? I just like can we take a break?
Yeah, yeah. Man, I talk about that all the time. Like, you know how, oh man, you gotta be doing this. And if you
Yeah,
ain't did
right.
nothing today, you it's like, no, just be human, just exist,
Well, you know
just be
what? You
like
know
the
what though,
tree.
Victoria? That was part of why I did it.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, I spent years doing this stuff, traveling all over the world, getting up at 5, meditating, working out, doing my juice, doing all my preparation for my speech from 9 to 7, then having something to eat, meet with the team, and go to bed every day.
yeah,
And that's why when I was burned out after this 4th marriage ending, 4th marriage, it seems so stupid. 4th marriage ending, I was burned out and I just went, I can't even repeat the word, but basically F it, right? I
yeah,
can't do I just need to be free. I just need to be a little crazy, have some fun,
yeah,
and
yeah.
in walks Tomas, right? Perfect timing, right?
You get what you put
Perfect
out into
timing.
the universe. I got you,
Yeah. Yes, I
got you.
did. Yes, I did. I got everything I was asking for and more.
Man,
But
it,
yeah, I don't have any regrets. But like I said, it was an amazing I've said a number of times in the book, they were the worst of times, they were the best of times. They were the
yeah,
times of our lives,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I'm grateful for the memories, and I'm grateful they are memories, and they're not
yeah.
happening right now, right?
Exactly.
You know? Because I can enjoy it so much better, right? Looking
Yeah,
back on it than rather going through some of the painful experiences, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think you hit on that perfectly. And even with just intimacy and people thinking that intimacy is only like sex.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes, well, I don't know because I'm not a male, but from what men communicate, they feel like sex is intimacy. But
Yeah.
on a woman's side, like you, just like they say, you warm the car up way before you ever start driving it. So it can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm
So
finna come in
true,
here
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I want to have sex with you, and it's just like that doesn't, like it sounds attractive in the guy's mind, like, yeah, I'm turned on about you, I want to have sex, like, I'm
Yeah.
finna do all these things to you, like that sounds painful, like I don't want to do that, like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? Or or some guys do get caught up in just like, and women do too, where it's just like you said, look, I do want to have sex, but I don't necessarily want to have sex with you. I want you to be a vessel for me to please myself.
Uh-huh.
And that's with I mean, like, thank God for toys, but, like, that's just true, like, sometimes it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't even want to have to start the car, like, no, thank you. Like, Imma go ride a bike, or Imma go get on the moped, Imma still get to where I'm going, and I don't need the headache. So I just think, like, even just learning and evolving and understanding, like, intimacy, like you said, you hit on almost every level of it, like, it starts with your mom and your dad, and
Mhm.
even the way that you interact with your children or your pets or any other relationship that you have, like intimacy is not this thing where, and once again, that's something that I feel like is done better outside of the United States. Like the human
Mm.
body is talked about
Mm.
more, and like,
Yeah.
they have like, in Germany, that was the
Mhm.
first time I ever seen like kids, women, everybody in a sauna. And it's not like
Mm.
they're looking at each other like, "Oh, this person is attractive," and that we're just in the sauna,
Yeah.
and we're just chilling, and nobody's thinking about it like, "Oh my goodness, this person is attractive, and I wanna do this to that." And maybe they are, but I didn't see none of that. And it's just like a beautiful dynamic when you
Mm.
understand to not shy away from, it's okay for you to not hide your body, and
Mhm.
it's okay for you to embrace your body, but when you start shunning these things and like, "You shouldn't feel this way," or like, "You shouldn't feel this way about your homeboy or your friend," or "This is homosexual," this, that, and the third. It's just like intimacy and sex and having attraction is
Mm.
like totally different things that we try to make, like I say, synonymous with each other. Like, no, if this is intimate, then that means you like this and it's like that. It's like, no, no, we're human. Let's retract, refrain from some of the negative thinking, and understanding that words do have meanings and they
Mhm.
are important. So yeah, like I say, I could keep you here all day, but I know we're not able to do that. I have loved this episode. So I have some questions for you to the listeners. Where can the listeners find the Venus flytrap?
Well, a couple of ways. I'm pretty sure the team sent you a link, right? So
Yes, we have the link.
people can click that link because they're in your audience, and
Yes, sir. Yes,
it will
sir.
give them the first 3 chapters of the book complimentary. So you can you can read this crazy, amazing, erotic romance with layers and layers and layers of amazing things you'll see about yourself, about the world, about sex, about everything really. And when you read 3 chapters, you'll be hooked, and then you'll buy it.
Exactly. Yes.
It's available on Amazon, right? And then the other thing is, if anybody wants to go deeper with me as their spiritual counselor, there is a complimentary 30-minute session with me to get to see if there is a good vibe between us, and you feel like I can help you to discover more about who you really are and overcome some of the experiences, challenges that might happen to you. Then I'd be excited to chat with you and see where that goes. And there's
Yes.
a link for that too. And then I think they probably sent you the website and my social media stuff, so
Yes.
people
Yes.
can contact me through there as well. I'd love
There
to hear
you
from you.
go. You're hitting on all the questions again. It was like, where can they contact you online? And you kind of already touched on this topic too. Is there any up and coming projects, books, or speaking engagements that you would like to share with my audience?
Well, the book 2 is coming out. I think actually it's out. I think book 2 is out on Amazon, but start with book 1, right?
Yeah.
But book 2 is coming out, and there is going to be a book 3. In fact, it's 3/4 of the way done, book 3. I
Okay.
thought it was going to be one. I thought it was going to be one book when I started, and it's turned into 3 books. It's a longer story than I thought. Anyway, and then I'm working on the other book that I mentioned to you, which is called Aurelia,
Yes, sir.
which is I'm really excited about that. And what else? Oh yeah, so it got me on podcast. The podcast is called the Venus Flytrap Podcast.
I was about to say it's the Venus. You click on the Facebook. It's the Venus
Yeah.
Flytrap.
They kept it simple.
Episode 1 is that? Is it? Yes, sir.
Yeah, they kept it simple so I could remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we're starting to work with agents and publishers. We want to get this into a movie and a series, right? So,
Yeah.
but that's, who knows how long that'll take.
I mean, we do live in a world now where, of course, like the series and stuff different if you want it on television opposed to streaming.
Well, I'm talking about streaming. I don't think
Yeah.
television is dead in the water now, isn't it? It's like,
So well, I'm looking forward to that because streaming is a little bit more like direct to consumer, and it doesn't necessarily take too long to cook
I
up.
think you can swear more as well, right?
Yeah. No, but yes, sir. So the last closing thought that I have for you, if the listeners remember only one thing from today's conversation, what would you want that to be?
Nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you.
We might need to change the name of the episode. I'm just saying. I'm gonna have to talk. I might have to talk with the team, but I think we might have to switch the name of the episode. But yeah, Dr. Edwards, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for reaching out. I just love it. You could tell yourself all day long. I get like emails and inboxes and stuff like that, but I love when it actually comes into fruition. A lot of the guests I have on here I've met online or just the way their team reached out. It's like, I think they'll be good for your show, but I thank you for supporting and listening. Everybody that comes on, we always send them a complimentary T-shirt. So my team is going to reach out, and we just need your size and the color that you want. And this is actually great because we just updated the logo to just align more with what we have going on. So you will be the first person to receive the T-shirt with the updated Overthinking Understanding logo. But yeah, to my audience, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I know I did, and I know y'all will because that's why y'all tune in every week. So I just say this, like always, be genuine to yourself and kind to others. I will see y'all next time.